Good morning to everyone. I'm Professor Deva from University of Raman. And today I'm going to talk about stress and stress management. The word stress has been used very widely. A lot of people talk about stress and in their lives, in economic stress. And now during the COVID epidemic or pandemic, there's a lot of stress in the lives of people, jobs, and all sorts of things. But what exactly is stress? And how can we manage stress? That is what this lecture is all about. So when we go to the first slide, okay, the first question is, what is stress? I don't want to go into a very scientific, detailed account of what is stress. You can write many books about stress. But just for this purpose of this lecture, I will just briefly mention in a nutshell what stress is. Stress is any change in the optimal state of functioning. What is this optimal state of functioning? Maybe you don't understand. If you're resting, sudden noise, loud noise is stress. You're in an optimal level of functioning. In other words, you're quite calm, everything going on smoothly. Let's say you're working. Let's say you're working in an office, everything's going on. Suddenly, somebody calls you and says, urgent, the boss wants to have a meeting with you. That is stress. Any change in your normal level of functioning is stress. Basically, it dates back to the time when we were animals, a long time ago. And when we started feeling the threat of something that make our life threatened, for example, a wild animal or a thunder or lightning, we didn't understand it. And we have this fear that something terrible is going to happen. So it's basically a reaction to a threat. That is what stress is. Now there is positive stress and negative stress. Positive stress is like being told you won a prize, 1 million ringgit prize. And you're excited about it. You can't sleep the whole night. You phone everybody and tell them what a great thing happened to you. That's also a change. Change is a normal level of functioning. But it's a positive stress. So you don't feel too bad because it's something that's good. But what happens in negative stress is just the opposite. It's when you're told you have failed in your entrance exam to UTAR University. That is a negative stress. And it can cause a lot of unhappiness, misery, and so on and so forth. Stress is a part of life. It is not unusual. It's not rare. It is not something grossly abnormal. Every day we face stress. Every day we face stress. From the time you're born, when you come out of your mother's womb and you're crying, you're comfortable for 9 months inside your mother. Now you come out, you have to learn how to breathe yourself. You've got to eat and cry and you feel cold outside, inside was warm and nice. That is stress. From the time you're born to the time you die, you will experience a lot of stress. Luckily, and good news is, luckily we can manage most stresses most of the time. So it comes, yeah, we can cope with it. We learn how to cope with it as a child, as a baby, as a child, as an adolescent, as an adult, young adult, older person, mature person, and even in old age we can cope. But every now and then, this stress might become worse. Now, I'm just going to show you a slide to illustrate what I mean. Now you're driving along the North-South Highway in Malaysia. Lovely day, sunny, traffic is light, and happiness. No problem. That is what I mean by a normal level of function. And then suddenly, as you're driving in this lovely day, you see this. You get surprised. What is this? All cars queuing up, everybody's slowing down. The traffic is not that smooth anymore. And this fellow to the left of you has put on his brakes, trying to stop. What is it? You get a bit worried, but not too much. When you go further up, you realize why everybody is talking. Why there's a jam? Because there's more stress. You realize there's a policeman there. At first you thought nothing to do with you. Now there's a policeman there. And then you get nearer and the stress becomes worse. Oh God, this is a speed trap. I'm going to get caught. And surprisingly, when you think about it, your thoughts of worry, of stress, you start getting palpitation. Your heart starts beating faster and faster. You start sweating. Your mouth becomes dry. Your hands start trembling. So what happens is the stress actually causes a reaction in your body, a physical reaction. And that is what stress does to a person. I think some of you may have heard of this word fight or flight. When you face a threat, like in the olden days, when there was a saber-toothed tiger roaring at you, or elephant come charging at you or something, or dinosaur, you had to fight or flight. Fight the animal, the threat that's going to attack you, or you run like hell to disappear. Hyperactivity of physical activity is needed and causes increase in the stomach reaction, digestion of food, heart beats faster, muscular strength becomes stronger, temperature regulation kicks into place, and butterflies in the stomach. And why is this happening? Because there's a threat of a speed trap due to the mental stress of getting caught by the police, which of course nobody wants. There are same symptoms are also seen in many real physical diseases like a heart attack. You can also get chest pain. You can also get palpitation. You can also get stomach cramps when there's stomach disease. Many things. And so even doctors, medical doctors, sometimes don't recognize the difference between stress and a physical illness. There are differences. Stresses occur far more commonly than the stomach diseases, than the heart diseases. Most of the ECG or other tests done for heart, gastroscopy done for the stomach, to find out when patients complain of stomach ache and this and that, we test, about 60% are negative. Why? Because these are brought on by psychological stress. Common symptoms of stress, when you experience stress, common symptoms, the commonest symptom actually is sleep disturbances for no reason at all. Somebody says, no, I don't understand why, but last few nights, I just cannot sleep. Others notice, friends around you may notice, you become more withdrawn. You don't want to participate in the social activities. In the class, you're not paying attention. And also, if you ask the person under stress, will tell you, is appetite change, overeating, or reduced interest in foods, poor concentration in study and work, disinterested in social activities, not enjoying games, sport, or even TV, your favorite programs. And the sexual activity also may be reduced. Sometimes it may be more, but usually it's reduced when you're under stress. Bowel motions, you may get loose motions without any disease, any infection, because your stomach is, your intestines are overworking to get ready to fight or flight. Preoccupation with health, very worried, something happened. Maybe I got a heart attack. Maybe I got a stomach cancer. Maybe I got this. Maybe I got that. This preoccupation makes you go seeking for doctor's help again and again. And the doctor said, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Nothing physically wrong with you. All the tests are normal. Well, why does this happen to anybody, like any of you university students or people, young people who are working? Why would they have sources? Where would they get this source of stress from? First and foremost, a lot of people are stressed because of themselves. The way they were brought up, the experience in early life, the suffering that they had in early life has made them very sensitive. And they get very easily stressed at the sign of anything unusual happening. It's like suddenly the lecturer tells you, we've decided to have a test next week. Surprise test. Everybody's going to sit for it. If you don't pass the test, we'll have to deduct some points from your continuous assessment. And this is a surprise test. It never happened before. So of course, everybody's surprised. Everybody's upset. But majority of people say, oh, next week, we'll still go 1 week more. No problem. So you still play a game and go out, but you study a little bit more. 1 or 2, from the night, they are told that there's going to be a test. They cannot sleep. For 1 week, they cannot sleep. This is due to the kind of person you are. You are a very sensitive person, more likely to get stressed than the other person. The stress is the same, but it affects different people differently. There may be stresses at home, parents, siblings, sibling rivalry. If you're married, with your spouse, with your children, a lot of home-related stresses. Then at work also there can be stresses. If you're in school or college, many stresses. As you know, there are many tests, many exams, many assignments that you have to carry out. Then of course, when you're in college, you may have some relationship. Even nowadays in school, people develop relationship with a girl or a boy, and that may not always run smoothly. There will be differences, there'll be quarrels, there'll be threat of breakup and all that. And of course, money is always a problem. So money-related stress is quite common. Outside factors, economic disasters, economic problems, countries where recession is happening, disasters, man-made disasters, COVID, big disaster, pandemic, wars. Luckily, in this country, we are lucky we don't have any wars now, and people are relatively safe. But there are many countries, every day you look in the news, you find many countries, refugees leaving the country because of war, dozens of people being killed, refugees drowning when they're trying to cross the ocean to go to a better life. And of course, political chaos. A lot of changes in governments and things like that can also cause stress. You can also look at stress by age groups. Many people think children don't have any stress. No. Children have a lot of stress. In fact, there are child psychiatrists, child psychologists whose job is to deal with the stress that children have. Within the family, a lot of problems. Not every family is smooth, rich, and capable. A lot of families have problems. One-parent families, more so. Father, mother divorced, maybe father died or mother died, and father remarried, all sorts of things can be a source of stress. Luckily, most of us don't have it, but some of them have. And therefore, there can be an age when there are a lot of stresses. Adolescence is a process of growing up, transition from childhood to adulthood, and it's a period of adjustment. So a lot of adolescent, what they call adolescent turmoil. Testing, trying this, trying that, getting upset very easily, very emotional. Early adulthood, you pass through adolescence. Early adulthood, you maybe enter college, or maybe your family can't afford it, or you didn't make the grade, so you get into a job, adjust to the job when you're 18 years old, 19 years old. Especially if you come from a single parent family. It's tough, man. Very, very tough. And a lot of problems in finding a spouse, finding a mate. Not everybody is lucky to have a first relationship as the one and only relationship. Many of them have broken relationships, unhappiness. Some of them even harm themselves because of that. Later adult life, adjusting to work and adjustment to different types of job, change of jobs. And later in adult life, adjustment to retirement, whether you've accumulated enough assets to look after your old age when you're not working anymore, when you're retired. Savings, as you know, recently there's a lot of talk about the EPF money that most people have is not sufficient to look after them for more than a few years. Although EPF is supposed to be for looking after the rest of your life. So people have to now think about creating some kind of funds for them. Rent out a house, or get a house and rent it out, or invest in some business or something to keep them going long after the so-called EPF has managed to support you. Old age, major source of health problems. When you're young, when you're even your middle age, major illness is not a problem. But all the illnesses that are big problems occur in old age. health, disability, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't run, you've already got a heart attack, so be careful about how you move around. Disability, maybe you're paralyzed or whatever, you had a stroke. And who's going to support you? And who's going to care for you? Can you afford a maid? Can the children be there? Nowadays, a lot of children are emigrating, not just overseas, but within the country. They are living, working in Johor Bahru, and you are in Ipoh. They can't come and look after you. They said, no, my job is there. Suddenly, all the children you brought up with great care and great sacrifice are no longer there to help. Then, of course, there are the normal external factors, like I said, related to COVID, war, disaster, economic chaos. That can occur in any age. When you want to know about stress, remember what you do not know about the stress or the person who's been stressed. Not everything is obvious. Not everything is very clear. Not everything is visible. And you said, oh, that's where the problem is. What happened? He failed the exam. That's why he's upset. What happened? His girlfriend left him. That's why he's upset. So what happens is people who try to help people who have got stress do not know the whole story. You take it from me. I've gone through this many times with many of my patients. What seems obvious, like this island, so obvious, is not the whole story. There's 9/10 of it underneath, which you do not know about. This is just a picture, just to illustrate the story. What you know, what you see, is nothing compared to what you do not know. People do not always reveal all the problems they have. Why should they? Everybody keeps secrets. Now, I worked in the Pacific Islands for some years. And there are many islands, thousands of islands. Even Indonesia has got about 13,000 islands. Philippines has got over 7,000 islands. And the Pacific has got tens of thousands of islands. They're just small dots like this. But underneath is what I showed you earlier. Every one of them has got a huge, monstrous, maybe even a volcano underneath, waiting to explode. Or it's exploded. In fact, these islands are formed by volcanic explosions. So when you see these tiny dots of stress, remember, there are monsters of stress that you do not see. And very important, even though the person is stressed, he or she may not tell you what those monsters of stresses they've been facing. All you see is the stressed person. But why? Please do not guess. Try to get that history from the person. Try to find out why the person is stressed. The background. If a person is stressed at the age of 40 years old, comes to you because he says, can't sleep, he's unable to work, he feels fed up, he feels like resigning his job. After 30 years working in the job, 20 years working in the job, he's now decided to give up. Wonder why, what is happening? Many reasons. Not just one reason, many. Some of it related to childhood, the way he was brought up. Maybe he's a very sensitive person, very easily upset. Adolescence, again, some problems, some trauma. Early adulthood, some problems that he couldn't overcome or could overcome. Later adult life, most of this he has managed to overcome. Got a job, got married, had children. So what happened now? So that is the effect that he or she is having now. But will they remember all of these 40 years of stories? Tell you, or at least tell some of the severe stresses without bias? Very often when people are upset, they look at, oh, I've suffered a lot. My father was not nice to me. I was not my mother's favorite. And my sister always got more. I got less. They won't tell you what suffering the father had to go through, what suffering the mother had to go through to get them through to the level where they are now. Sure, they didn't become a graduate, but they still sacrificed. So that you get a very biased view of what the stress is all about. Interpersonal stress in family, in childhood, in family life as a child, home environment, all this I've already mentioned just now. Parents stressing children, poor parenting skills. A lot of people are getting married nowadays with no experience, no maturity. When you're married, of course, first time you experience everything first time. But many of them are rather immature when they get married. And that leads to a lot of problems in bringing up children. And the problem children have, school stress, exam stress, punishment stress, and families' economic, social, and ability issues. Relationship issues in adolescence and early adulthood. In every relationship, everybody wants the best. When they have a friend, they want the best friend. When they have a girlfriend, they want the most good-looking girl. When they want a boyfriend, they want the richest and handsomest boy. But nobody's that perfect. It's your mood that makes you think the person is perfect. Many obstacles. No one is a perfect clean slate. And without any background, experience, personality, family background. Common mistakes are looks are more important. Good talker, great guy, not always. Good choice in reliable choice of response. All these are very complicated. Broken relationship and stress, not all are rare. Very common. Very rare you find somebody with one love is the only love and got married to the person. Don't believe all you see in the movies. This is just for consumption of the public, but not the real story of life. Boy-girl relationships and stress, they may not tell you when they are stressed, even when sometimes they've taken an overdose because of the stress relationship. How intense was the relationship? How long the relationship? How many previous relationships ended in disappointment? Did they actually get engaged, meet each other's parents? How serious was it? Very often they don't tell you all this. They just tell you, I'm recently upset. My boyfriend left me. You don't know how many boyfriends you had. What were the circumstances? Come across patients who actually were intimate with their boyfriend, had abortions, and then the boyfriend left. I feel very sorry for such people because they've gone through a lot of trauma. And now they found another boyfriend and that boyfriend is left. Can you imagine? You will not know this unless you take a proper history, try to understand the problem. Okay, now you get married and supposedly things should be better. Marriage and stress. Pre-marriage stress, long story, I don't want to go into that again. But personalities are different. People are born in different places, different, sometimes different country, different race, different caste or clan or whatever. Families, not all families are very supportive. Some of them want to exploit the children. So that's why I say families, in-laws, outlaws. Baggage from the past, not everybody comes with a clean slate. Many of them have many baggages from the past. Broken relationships, family trauma, post-marital stress, money, very big problem in the early ages of your marriage, unequal sharing of the responsibilities and load. This kind of idealistic marriage or romance and marriage that you see in pictures, courting this girl, lying down on the girl and say, this is seventh heaven. And then having a wedding car with sugarcane hanging out, tea ceremony and all that is just an imagination and the early phase of what they think is a lovely married life. Romantic relationship, sweet marriage ceremony, not equal to a safe, lasting, happy marriage till death do us part. Then you see the common sense realities of married life. You find even getting married in India, I remember seeing 10 pages of marital advertisements, wanting what kind of bride, what kind of bridegroom. Of course, they tell the very best. They don't tell you everything else. Dowry, big issue in India and many other countries. Dowry is a big issue, although it's illegal in India, but still goes on. They want huge amount of money. And suddenly you're down to earth, no longer this romance that you saw earlier. So marriage is not always smooth. It may end up in divorce, separation, frequent quarrels. He says a woman must be a genius to create a good husband. And sometimes the marriage ends in a divorce, death of a spouse, and one parent has to look after a child, whether he's a boy or girl or whatever. So, what is the source of the current person's problem? Is it the lifelong pattern of suffering, of stresses, of unhappiness? Or is it something more recent? Actually, a lot of the background to stress, that is early childhood, family, upbringing, suffering, deprivation, and so on, actually are only part of it. The biggest problem is what happened now. What has stressed the person in the past 1 week or the past 1 month? This is the real reason for the stress today. So you've got to look at that, whether it's money, whether it's relationship, whether it's the crazy economy, out of a job, COVID, and not vaccinated, waiting for 3 months for vaccination. You know, you're registered in Psychiatry, but nothing has happened. So when you see the net result of marital strife, in some cases, very tragically, the child is abused. The child is a victim of the marital strife. Every child abuse and neglect tragedy, it's a real tragedy. It's like the tip of an island. We see, but the stress problems, we do not see or know. So underneath every child abuse, nowadays you see in the papers, some children have been killed by the parents, sometimes even the natural parents, sometimes adoptive parents. So also every suicide, every divorce, every psychological stress, it's got a long story. It's not something that is just like that, nothing much. Work-related stress, now you go beyond marriage to work. Everybody has to work for a living. Work is seldom a stress, unless a square peg in a round hole. And that you're not qualified, but somehow you got it. Somebody helped you to get a job, but actually you're not qualified. You're not trained, and therefore it becomes very stressful. Most work, when you start working, you're qualified, you know how to do it. There's an adjustment period, but most people do not find work as a stress in itself. This is what I learned after many years of seeing patients. They complain of work, but actually the problem is that the environment of work, the reward system, the discrimination that goes on. Saya suka boss. So the boss is the one that is creating everything. So sometimes that environment of work is very, very stressful. And also sometimes an administration which is not competent, but professionals who are trained and qualified and graduated find it very difficult to work under such circumstances. You have people who are highly qualified, whatever, whether it's IT or whether it's making shoes or making char kway teow, but the atmosphere, the environment can be very stressful. So some leaders are born great, so they can manage better. Others achieve greatness, but quite a number of leaders who head departments and organizations have greatness thrust upon them. One day they're workers, next day they make, you're the boss. Why? The other boss transferred, he resigned or something, and nobody else, you take it. And many of them are not suited for that job. But all of them are in the hot seat, and that's a major cause of stress. This kind of working environment, one person controls everything or occupies everything, the other person is suffering. Who cares? Many, many sufferings go on like this in every industry. Some people do all the work, the difficult work, balancing everything, and some people get all the garbage. Some people in a working environment full of snakes. You're sitting on a chair full of snakes, and the snakes are always out to bite you, criticize you, and make your life miserable. Effects of stress, signs of stress. How do you know a person's under stress? They may not tell you. Sometimes they tell you, I can't sleep, I don't know what, I feel terrible. And all that. Very often they don't tell you, and you notice it. You notice it by the way they change in their behavior. What happens when they're under stress? The natural tendency is look for how to reduce the stress. And what they do is they smoke in excess, drink alcohol in excess. Then before they were taking once in a while. Now they take every day. They go to the pub every day. Gambling in excess. Serial affairs, broken relationships. While they're married, they're having an affair with one of the other girls whom they know or boys whom they know. Broken relationships. All these show something underneath, like that island with the 9/10s below. Something is troubling. Some volcano is getting ready to explode. And poor work record. Somebody is working quite smoothly. Suddenly, recently, absenteeism, all the time ponting and getting, going on medical leave and don't know what is going on. And long-standing stresses in the life of a person do have a pathological effect or bad effect on the children. So that you find children also having behavior problems and maybe even relationship problems and maybe even divorces. When you find a family where this kind of thing in children is quite common, it just shows there's some stress going on within that family, either spouse or both people or whatever. The challenge for a person who's trying to help resolve this is long-term stress person mostly able to cope most of the time. They would have not been able to come this far unless they're able to cope. Versus, nobody has got no stress. Everybody has got stress, but most people can cope. Recent severe stress that has made them come for help. Or something happened recently that made it worse. Chronic long-term stress is not rare. It's fairly common. I've come across many people who have sleeping difficulties for years. A lot to do with personality, a lot to do with close relationship going wrong, marital problems. For example, husband took a second wife. Since then, this woman has been sleeping problems. Very common, not that rare. No? Marriage problems, chronic problems, in-law problems with father-in-law, mother-in-law, coming to stay with them, all sorts of things. And of course, problems related to children. Long-term stresses often appear insoluble, no way out. Actually, every problem has got a solution, but too much at risk, so nobody wants to change the things. Can lead to depression, suicide, if more crises occur. The suicides do not occur because of long-term problems, but something makes it worse. So when you ask people, they say, oh, this person understood. They might take a holiday. Holiday doesn't work. The stress is real and quite serious. Taking a holiday doesn't work because the problem will follow you wherever you are in your mind. Counseling by trained counselor is helpful. That's true. Because the trained counselor can actually identify the problem better than you can because it's your problem. Their problem, I mean, they can, because they're trained to look out for these problems. Prayers definitely will help, and by learning acceptance and so on. So you find on the internet this kind of how to reduce stress. I need to explain this a little bit because a lot of people may be doing this and thinking this will reduce stress. How to reduce stress and anxiety. So when you look at this, you get the feeling, oh, stress is nothing. You play the guitar, you'll feel better. Creative hobby, you'll feel better. Exercise daily, you'll feel better. Go outside. Be active in a community. What it basically ignores is, what is it that causes stress in the first place? How can you solve the causes of that stress? For example, you lost your girlfriend. Play the guitar and the girlfriend will come back. Is it really possible? You lost your job due to COVID. Exercise daily and you get back your job. Your money will come back, bank balance will come back to normal. Not possible. So these are rather unrealistic suggestions given on the internet. I've seen this so many times in so many countries, even some of them in printed and put up as posters in some hospitals and clinics. Cannot sleep, get enough sleep. Then it says here, get enough sleep. You can't sleep because the thing is troubling you. Get enough sleep and you get better. but you can't sleep. Then you take tablets, you take beer, and it gets worse. You get two diseases instead of one. Suicides and parasuicides, I need to explain this a little bit to you because a lot of misconceptions about suicide and parasuicide. Suicide, the word suicide should be only used when the person is dead. Somebody took his own life, her life or his life, and he's dead. That is suicide. What you see often is parasuicide. Parasuicide is a word invented about 50 years ago by a psychiatrist in Edinburgh who said this, taking an overdose but not dying, cutting your wrist but not dying, taking some rat poison, not dying. This kind of thing is very common, but it doesn't lead in death. So that's called parasuicides. There's some people who do parasuicides, like for example, somebody took, instead of taking Clorox in an effort to harm themselves, it turned out they took paraquat. And paraquat is very dangerous. Within 10 days, you'll be dead. And so parasuicide turned out to be suicide. Other person who jumped down from the 14th floor of a building, there's no way he can survive. He's going to die. But he lands on a car or an awning and nothing happens. He just broke his ankle or something. So actually it was suicide, the real suicide attempt, but it failed and therefore you survived. So there are some overlap between the two types. Parasuicide, very common, at least one or two seen in a large hospital every day, even in Muslim countries where suicide is relatively rare. But suicides, these occur mostly, parasuicide occur mostly in women. 80% are due to relationship problems, young women. Suicides are mostly in men, relatively rare. You don't see suicides every day in every hospital. They end up in death. Later age, and very often associated with actual depressive illness. The parasuicide is mostly due to stress, quarrel with a boyfriend, quarrel with a husband, things like that. Whereas the suicides are more due to long-term depressive illnesses. Very quickly, I want to just, for those of you who are not aware of the psychiatric diseases, because there are 450 psychiatric diseases, we can't remember everything. So just classify them very simply. Anxiety diseases, anxiety-related diseases, for which we have some medicines, anxiolytics. Depression or depressive illnesses, we use antidepressants. Psychosis, this is the so-called gila or madness, and that we use antipsychotics. Substance abuse and some personality problems, but there are very limited amount of medicines and not that much of success. That's why the substance abuse problem is a growing problem. And although there are many methods being used, it's not always successful. And the child and adolescent psychiatric problems, where the treatment is mostly family therapy because the child's environment is within the family. Plus, all of them require some psychological, behavioral, social therapies and rehabilitation together. I call this the Lima Classification because Lima means 5. In many countries, from Madagascar to Hawaii, Lima means 5. So these are the 5 simplified classifications that I've created to make it easier for you to know what are the different types of mental illness. So the stress that I'm talking about is mostly anxiety, about 60%, and 20% about depression. Not the psychosis, not the substance abuse, although some people with anxiety also go for taking substance abuse, drinking and alcohol and all that. And not child psychiatric disorders. What are the principles of reducing stress? First and foremost, recognize and anticipate what causes stress in you. What causes stress in other people may be different. But in you, you know very well by the time you're an adult, what are the things that upset you? Okay? And try to find ways around it. Don't be too greedy and selfish and go blindly into a stressful situation. Always be cautious. The more prepared you are, the less stress you will experience. So you can avoid, what do they say in medicine? prevention is better than cure. So prevent the stress. You cannot prevent it all the time, but many times you can prevent the obvious source of stress. There's no such thing as lifestyle disease, only life stress diseases. I'd like to show you a post that I made for my students. Okay, right. We'll go to the next one. How do you solve the problem of stress at source? First of all, be honest. What are recent stresses, recent changes? About what? What is troubling you? Something is troubling you. Nobody can get stressed for no reason. There must be a reason. Take a piece of paper and actually write it down. Take a piece of paper, take a pen, write down what are the stresses you had recently. What upset you most? What did not upset you 3 weeks ago, 1 month ago? And list it down. That way you get clear in your mind what is troubling you. And try to solve them. If you can't solve them, then try to go for counseling. Now, all universities in this country have counseling units. Every university. UTAR has got counseling units in Kampa as well as in Sungai Long. Trained counselors, they have had many years of training and experience. And counseling by trained counselors will help you to solve your problem, not solve your problem for you. There's a big difference. One is they help you, but you got to solve the problem. The sources of the stress. Adjust to it. Makes life alternative paths. They will not give you a magic answer. Oh, you got this problem. Okay, I tell you, you do this 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll be all right. That is the counselor's job, is actually to understand the problem, look at the problem. You may ask a question, I know my problem. Why is that I need to go and see a counselor? Well, because you can't see your own face. You can't see what you are doing to cause that stress, to invite that stress. I saw this, I did this, I mean, I'm teaching in some overseas country. And every time after the course, we run the course there, and after the course, I tell them, all of you come, we're going to have a group photo. The moment I do that, most of the participants are women. But what they do is they immediately take out the mirror and start adjusting their hair. Why? Why is that? I never do that. I never bother about the way I look. But they do. Why? Because they want to look very well in the photograph. Why do they need a mirror? Because they do not know how they look at that moment. Maybe the hair is out of place. Maybe the makeup is not good. So just like that, you do not know objectively the stresses that are causing you trouble. So that is why you need to have another person, the counselor, like a mirror, look at that person, and the person will tell you, have you ever thought of this? You wonder why you have gotten into this problem. You wonder why you always get into stress because of relationships. Do you wonder? The counselor asks questions, makes you think, then you learn, and then you adjust yourself. They act as a mirror. You do the changing, sacrifice, and readjustment. If you could do it yourself, you can do it. But obviously, if you can't, then you need a counselor's help. No easy solution. Counselor cannot live your life for you. You have got to live here. The counselor may say, you do this, and then you go back and you find you can't do it. You can't blame the counselor. You have to learn it. So this personal growth that occurs with counseling is very important. So we have many problems when you have stress. One of which is the effects of counseling, effects of stress. Stress itself is very stressful, but the effects are, as I told you, palpitation, you get sweating, can't sleep at night, you can't concentrate on your work. How can you reduce this? One of the most important things is to do relaxation exercise. Yoga is very good, but it's very complicated, requires training. I myself don't do it routinely for my students because I myself don't do it. But relaxation exercises can be done by anyone, anytime. And I'll demonstrate that to you presently. That's why it's called demo. Religious meditation, very good. All religions have messages in meditation. Very useful, but it's quite difficult. You have to learn it and practice it regularly. Medicines can reduce symptoms of stress, but not solve the problem. When you can't sleep, yes, you take medicine, you can sleep. But it cannot solve the problem. The original problem is still there, you know. And if you take medicine for too long, you take cigarettes for too long, you take alcohol for too long, you are bound to get into other problems. So I wouldn't recommend medicine as the first line of treatment. Now, how do you do the relaxation? I'll quickly show you in 2 minutes how this relaxation can be done. Basically, you lie down is the best. But if not, like the students you see in this picture, my students doing relaxation techniques, by sitting on a chair, resting your head on the wall or the back of the chair, if you have a high back chair, and keep your arms loose, your legs stretched out, just like what you see in the students doing there. And it basically consists of deep breathing and exhalation, like this. I'll show you how it does. Idea is to take a deep breath by keeping the mouth slightly open, eyes closed. Take a deep breath, it fills your lungs. That's why you need your mouth open slightly, because you take in more air, fill up your lungs. Hold it for 5 seconds when you reach maximum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then exhale. When you exhale completely, hold for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then take a deep breath again. You repeat that 10 times. Just after this lecture, 10 times you do it, you feel very relaxed. And some of them might actually go to sleep. And in fact, my students, among these students, 1 or 2 actually slept off after doing it 10 times. And after everybody woke up, these fellows were still fast asleep. That's how relaxation is, how effective it is, and it's worth doing. So please practice this 4 times a day for 10 minutes, not 10 times, but 10 minutes. That means about 30 times each morning, midday, evening after your work, and nighttime before you go to sleep. And that is much better than any medicines. So we have a stress management center in UTAR, which is at KK Ampang, and all medical students who go through that, and the patients we see are taught that regularly. This has been used for thousands of years, basically like yoga and meditation, but very simplified and very modified so that anybody can do it. Sorry, no quick cures. Medicine to instantly cure human problems, like relationship problems, work problems, problems in family, problems with siblings and so on, quarrels and failures in work and loves and administration. No instant cure. These require more than the relaxation, because that is only for the symptoms, awaits discovery. If you can find an instant cure, you'll get many Nobel Prizes. No vaccine yet. Many mutant stains of stresses are also there. Some universal truths of all religions. That's why I'm not a very religious person, I must admit. You know, I pray to God, but I'm not excessively religious. But I found that religions have got the best stress management strategies from thousands of years. Every religion, no matter how different they look, they all have this. And they have religious meditation in every religion. Basically, it says control greed, because greed is the major source of stress. Give more, take less. Love your enemies. May not be that easy. At least tolerate the enemies. Don't preoccupy yourself with always thinking about the enemy. That fellow did this to me. This fellow did that to me. No, please. Don't carry baggage. Once you're over, finish. Honesty, not cheating. You can get away with cheating many times for a while. Eventually, you come back. Work hard, especially for students. Work very hard. Work as hard as you can and leave the rest to God. You can't do more than your best. You do your best and pray hard. God, please help me to get over this. And if you follow these principles of religion that I mentioned, most of the time your stress will be much less. I cannot prevent stress. You never know when the next earthquake would occur, when the next COVID is going to come, when the mutant is going to get worse. We have never known this. So too many stresses, but leave the rest to God. Accept losses. Do not look for revenge. Look for revenge, there'll be more stress. Lastly, practice your religion regularly, not just before exams, which everybody does. God, please help me. I got to pass my exam. Yeah, you do that, but please also practice the principle. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, please contact me through the email, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.